What's up, you guys? It's Jay Carnas. Welcome back to another video. If it's your first time seeing one of mine, please subscribe and check out all the stuff I have available. So, to start off, as you can see, I'm cutting up a piece of watercolor paper that I had laying around. I'm cutting it down to a 5x7. It was an odd size before. I'm pretty sure it was a scrap sheet from a bigger piece of paper that I had from way back from another project. So this kind of goes to show that I keep all of my paper in canvas as much and as long as I can, because we already know it's not cheap anyway, and you never really know when you're going to use it again. So yeah. Anyway, I'm using an X-Acto knife here and a ruler to line it up and cut. Once I'm done cutting, I twist out the blade and turn it around. This keeps the blade inside, away from any potential stabs, and just to protect the tip itself from breaking in my drawer, which happens a lot more than you think. After that's done, I'm going straight into drawing. I'm going to challenge myself a bit here and go straight in with a micron pen. No pencils, no erasers, none of that. This is a very good way of challenging yourself. You need to learn to kind of trust your marks. It forces you to trust your marks. It kind of gets you out of your comfort zone from erasing and using a pencil, because when you're using that, you kind of already know that, you can just erase it if you mess up and just try it again and try it again. But what a lot of people don't know is that when you erase too much, you're actually damaging the paper, and you're just making your work just muddy, and you're not just trusting the process. When you work with a pen, which I do a lot in my sketchbooks when I'm sketching, it's to force you to really pay attention to what you're actually drawing, to pay attention to the shape of everything, the forms, the depth, the lines, the shadows, the highlights, and all that stuff. You're going to mess up. It's normal. It's okay. I mess up all the time, but the pen is there to force you to accept it, and it's great practice. The pen I'm using, by the way, is a micron pen. Just like I showed you, it's a 005, so it's a really, really tiny tip. Very good for fine lines. If I do make any mistakes, it won't be as bold compared to a much darker and thicker line, like a thicker marker, or the pen in this case. So I recommend using this one to do the initial drawing if you're going to take this approach of just using straight pens. For the feathers on the rooster, I'm not going to draw in every single feather. That's crazy. Instead, I'm going to put down a bunch of lines going in a general direction, which in this case would be going down, and slightly turning and indicating that, there's feathers there, or hair, or some similar texture in that area. If you focus too much on trying to get every strand in, you're going to go nuts. And yeah, the micron pens, very thin tip, very good for details. You can also go over it a couple times, darken it up if you just want to stick to this specific size, which is what I normally do. Or you can increase in the sizes. They have a bunch of sizes: 02, 01, 05, 08. They got a brush pen. They have the pen nibs. They got a bunch of different sizes. Once I've drawn out everything, emphasizing the shadows and any specific details, it's time to move on to the colors. Like I said, I'll be using Tombow markers. Now, there's a lot of Tombows. There are a bunch of packs, and then they sell them individually, and then they just sell the whole set, which is I think like 100 markers. I'm not sure, but there's a lot. In this case, I do have like 90 something. I think that's the full count, but I wouldn't be surprised if they released more. They don't go by color name. They actually are numbered, if you don't know about Tombows. And in order to keep track of them, in front of one of my other sketchbooks, I've dedicated a page spread to color swatches for each marker with a number next to it. When I want a specific color, I go off of this chart. When I work with Tombows, I start off with light colors and I make my way into darker colors. I make my pick. In this case, I'm going to go with like a 990, for example, which is a very, very light brown. It's almost like a sand color. I test the marker on the scrap paper to make sure it's good, which by the way is very, very important when you're working with markers. And then, yeah, we just go straight into putting in the highlights. And then after that, with time, once you get all the little highlights in there, you can get a little darker. For example, here I'm jumping to a 992, which is just a shade or two after. And you place that color around. And you keep doing that with every color that I pick up. Going back to that scrap of paper, by the way, it is very important because the last thing you want to do is grab a color based off of your chart and have one of two things happen, which both have happened to me and they're not fun. One of them would be you place the color down and the marker has run out. So now you have an off color, dry brush, faded, mark on your work, and it just looks weird. And you kind of have to hope that you have a duplicate of that color. If not, you have to work around that. Or you accidentally grab the wrong marker, even though it's all labeled, and it's really, really close to the one you are supposed to pick out, and you didn't notice. You place it down, and now you got a random color in there that you have to either incorporate into the piece now or find a way to hide it. Trust me, they both suck. Stick to testing it out on a piece of paper on the side, a scrap paper. It doesn't have to be big. It's just a couple marks on there and you're good to go. This testing paper, by the way, also helps you figure out if 2 or 3 colors will work well together. For example, like if you want to see if like this shade of red works well with this blue or it'll work well with the green, you can put them right next to each other before you test it out directly on the artwork. That is another way of avoiding anything being messed up. I'm working a lot on the body of the Rooster right now. I'm showing all of these yellows, reds, and browns in there. The yellows and lighter browns are, of course, for the highlights, and the oranges and reds and darker browns are for the middle and the darker shades. The different colors next to each other will help create the depth and help shape the Rooster. You have to kind of like work with the colors and have like the lights going to dark. That creates the value and the shape and the form, and it just gives it the life that it needs. And that being said, speaking about mistakes, like I said earlier, if you notice here, those really light browns and yellows that I used are barely visible now thanks to the amount of reds and browns I've been using. So now I have to use a much brighter yellow and a much brighter orange to kind of show that there's, lighter areas to the Rooster. So yeah, it got way too dark, way too fast. And like I said, it happens. The mistakes are there, and that's how you learn. And now I know that, hey, if I am going to lay this color down, I kind of need to not jump into reds and browns so fast. And now moving on to the other parts of the Rooster, same process, lighter colors, and working my way into the darker shades. The For the shadow here in the face, I'm not going to use the same reds and browns that I used in the feathers. Instead, I'm going to go with a purple. Just change it up a little bit. For the beak, nice grays with a tad bit of brown, maybe that should be good. darken it up the pupil and add in those really dark spots with the black around the whole rooster, just to give it more pop, more contrast, and yeah, and just give it more life. Not too much, because you don't want to take away from the colors, and you don't want to darken it up and make it flat. And the dark, it's not really to give it like a outline. It's more of just touching up on the darkest parts of the drawing. For the background, I want a nice, calm, kind of like farmish color. So, I mean, is that a farm? Just a nice, calm color. So I'm placing the color swatches next to the rooster and seeing which colors works well. I'm kind of leaning towards like a bluish greenish, so I'm putting this next to that and seeing which one works well. I'm liking this nice green here, so let's do that. There's too much ground to cover, and I'm not trying to color it all in. There's no need for that. So I'm gonna have like a full color kind of thing from behind the rooster and break away the further it gets away. I actually do the same technique a lot in my digital artwork, which is usually when it's like fan art or portraits and busts and like standalone things where like the background isn't important. I usually just do this with colors just to have the color work with the actual design. Which, by the way, check out my website, jcardenosart.com. Right now, I don't have a lot of originals on there. There's just mostly fan arts. I did sell out of most of my originals, and I've also been backed up on them because I've been working on several projects at once. So it's taking me a bit longer than it should be. But I will have originals up soon. Be patient. In the meantime, if you're interested in any fan art in my style, I do have a ton of characters. If you have one that you would like to see, send me a message or leave a comment in this video. So yeah, let's add some final touches. I did buy these white pens a couple of weeks ago. I haven't had a chance to use them. I actually haven't even opened it. You're seeing me open it for the first time. So let's use this to add little white highlights on this little guy. As you can see here, I tested it out first in the scrap paper. It didn't seem to be working, so I tried it on my finger. It works well on my finger. It might be that it's not really sticking well to the watercolor paper or on top of the Tombows. I'm not sure. Or it could just have been the one I was using, because as you see here, I tried a different pen from the pack and it ended up working better. Still not as opaque as I'd like it to be, but I figured whatever, screw it, let's have some fun and add in some white highlights with the pen and see what happens. Alright, so it was whatever. It's not the nicest. I was expecting something better, brighter, much more opaque white highlights. I was told that the best approach to do this kind of like highlights like this would be a pink pen, but for the next one, we'll test it out next time. But yeah, overall it was okay. Just a few more marks here and there. And last but not least, my signature, which I will be doing in a second. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to leave me a comment, subscribe, like my video. If you haven't already, check out all my other videos. I do have a bunch of stuff with Tombows, acrylics, crayons even. And yeah, check out my affiliate links, and I'll see you guys soon.